Why would you do that for a tariff? On the other hand, it'd be good to know. I would love to know that information. And I'm not going to look it up. If I could see it next to, a ballpoint pen on Amazon, good. The second one is Elon Musk, where a rumor started spreading that the board was looking for a new CEO. And then as soon as it came out into the public eye, uh, Tesla immediately said, "Oh no, we hadn't thought of that at all." Now, I bet you both of them had thought of that. And they were going in the preliminary stages of planning. And I bet you Tesla went even further and were actively putting together the job listings for the CEO. Because, it takes 10 months or so for a CEO to get hired. I bet they were both doing it. And I think that when they got caught in the spotlight, they didn't want that kind of exposure. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Silicon Valley Insider. Hey, Scott.
Hey, Mike.
How are you?
Good. Thank you. Very good.
So we encountered a phenomena this week that I really didn't expect for years, perhaps, at least months. And that is usually when you get a really hot technology and it creates this bubble and boom, usually it takes about 2 years or more for it to finally come back. So, everything kind of deflates and then restores as people begin to put actual value onto the technology and find applications. And I thought that would be the case with AI. We've seen a lot of claims for AI, and we've seen some interesting products and a few kind of clever applications of it. But I didn't think we would see the second half of the bump for a while. And yet this week, Microsoft and Meta blew the doors off the market. And it all appears to have been AI. And then we have a dark horse coming in, which is Palantir. Now, we kind of stopped talking about Palantir when it went off and started working with the DoD and moved to Colorado. But apparently Palantir's AI software is being used now by banks and other commercial applications, civilian applications. It has grown, the stock has grown 1,000% in 3 years. Well, nobody was really watching while it was in stealth mode. What do you think of all this?
Well, if you wanted to start with Palantir, most of that growth has been really within the last year. It has had an incredible run. And I think it's one of those companies that was almost built for the AI revolution as far as it's stealthy. You don't really know what it does, similar to AI. It can prove results with time because it gets clients and it gets customers, same with AI. But it can also make mistakes and we don't really know because it's secretive, just like AI. So Palantir is one of those companies that I think is going to do well in the AI world because it can say, look, we're selling all this AI, we're doing all this AI. Can't show you it, can't tell you how, but our bottom line is improving. And it may just be because they have a lot of paying customers. Maybe AI is in the mix somewhere. But when you're a secretive software company, it seems like you can get away with a little bit because you have that sort of sheen of mystery about you.
Yeah, that apparently they have a really interesting AI platform. They're not talking about it, but the commercial world, big financial institutions seem to be snapping it up. And maybe we'll never know, but bully for them. I've never understood that company. I've been following it for years. I still don't even know what they do.
Except they have a lot of government
stuff.
contracts. Yeah, they're data collection, a lot of government contracts, and that allows them to fly below the radar in a lot of ways. But it also allows for very steady business. Remember, even during the dot-com bust, the companies that had the information-related government contracts were still doing well because what cranks out more information and data, even during bad times, than the government? And it seems like Palantir has a nice little niche there.
Sure. And if you're in the data gathering business, I mean, what is AI except
Right.
data gathering and
Right.
pumping it through, machine learning and that sort of thing. So anyway, as long as we're on Meta, Mark Zuckerberg, never underestimate the avarice of Mark Zuckerberg. Uh, he now says he's hinting that the advertising industry is next, that he believes that he has said in an interview this week that he believes that one of the last frontiers in advertising and marketing is content. And he thinks that AI will replace traditional advertising. It'll be managed by it. It'll produce the content, the graphics, and all that. So, who needs advertising agencies? You just can go to Meta and hire them to use their AI to give you your advertising. What do you think?
Um, I think it sounds like one of the many claims of AI that just hasn't been proven yet and may never be proven. And who knows? AI is data collection. Data
Right.
collection makes for more effective advertising. That's why targeted advertising has worked so well. Remember, Google kind of came up with this, and then Meta and the others, have ridden that to gigantic profits. Does AI help that? I don't know. I guess the more data you have on your potential customers, the more you can say, here's what color they're like, or here's what kind of SUV they'll like, or whatever. But
Right.
again, I think AI might be getting a little too much credit here for simply doing your research and doing the work to find out what your customers might want.
Yeah, but I think he's also talking about the animation and illustration part of all this. I mean, I suddenly realized one day that I was looking at a car commercial of the car driving through some alpine landscape with a lake below and snow and all that, and that everything in it was created, was AI. Even the driver of the car was AI generated. Now, that's kind of a brave new world of all this. You don't need anybody. You don't need the illustrator at the ad agency. You don't. You might still need somebody to write the copy, but
You might.
most of that's pretty stupid anyway. So, he may be onto something.
You're
Whether
right.
he'll pull it off or it'll be, the next metaverse, we'll see. But it's an interesting notion and a kind of scary one.
You're
Okay,
right. And I think that is something to be scared about if you're an ad agency. You're right. I see what you mean there. And yeah, the actual design of these things is starting to get a little amazing. Just the
yeah,
artwork that can be done. And that's the concern about, say, deep fakes that we've had for some time are, things look so realistic and people look so real. And then you have them doing something that they didn't do because of the AI generation part. And that's where the mistrust, I think, comes in. And that's going to be a problem if ad agencies can't be trusted,
yeah.
then forget about it. The game's over. You need to be trusted to sell us something that we don't know that we want. If that trust goes away because of bad AI, then aren't we starting at ground zero?
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more subtle than, George Washington working a Mac. It's going to
Right.
it's going to be things that we don't realize aren't fake. Okay. The president of the United States is going to the United Arab Republic in Emirates, I'm sorry, in May 13th, I think. Now, we've talked in the past about how the Middle East has been a conduit to move embargoed high-end NVIDIA and other chips, AI chips, into China. Well, there's NVIDIA apparently is really betting on, and to the point that their stock went up 4.5% this week on Trump cutting a sweetheart deal with the Emirates to allow to not embargo the chips there. Now, this strikes me as pretty dumb. If you're going to embargo AI chips to stay ahead competitively with China, why are you allowing the one place that appears to have the black market on these chips to get away with no embargo? I don't get it.
No, I don't know. And if even that deal exists, will they announce it? There's so many back channels. We've talked about those too. The
Yeah,
way that, remember when DeepSeek came out, and it was like, where could they possibly have gotten these extremely powerful chips? It's a Chinese company, for goodness sakes. And it's like, okay, come on, we know.
we know.
I think there are workarounds for a lot of these things. And I think the big tariff concern right now is, will they work? Nvidia announces, I mean, Jensen Huang was at the White House earlier this week talking about, once again, building chip plants here. Apple's earnings come out, and Tim Cook has to admit, we're really not sure about the next 3 months when it comes to shipping phones from China and India and places like that where they're manufactured. And we still don't know, A, which tariffs are going to be in place where, and therefore, B, we don't know the effect. And I
Right.
admire Wong and NVIDIA for playing offense instead of defense by saying we're going to start building here. That's obviously what the president wants too. But we just don't know if this Christmas that $1,100 iPhone is going to be $2,000 or not. We just don't know.
Right. Okay. Do you know what de minimis is?
Yes.
Yeah, well, basically, for those of you who are not as educated as you are, and I'm one of those people who didn't really know this, but as you know, I've been working for 2.5 years on a big book about a startup, and they mentioned de minimis to me, so I had to look it up. And apparently, it's the idea that coming in under the tariff, uh, escaping it, coming in underneath it, are low priced goods, uh, certain parts and pieces of things, and you don't have to pay a tariff on, say, like a bowl, or a hat, or even a padding on a couch or something. So um, de minimis has been exempt from the big tariff battle. Well, apparently it's about to come to an end. And if China, I was talking on the BBC last night with a guy who makes bowls in China. He's an American company. Uh, and he was already saying most of the factories in China making the low end toys and that sort of thing are already bankrupt or empty. And now this de minimis seems to be the last straw. I mean, this could be really devastating to a lot of countries, but especially China.
Well, this has been in the news a lot. And the way a lot of us learned about de minimis was through these companies that are very popular online shopping sites like Temu and Shine. And these are where you can get those
Yeah.
products that fall underneath the radar of the tariffs. And what we've started to see, even in the last few days, is now if you go on Temu, the shirt or the lining for the couch or the bowl or the pen that you talk about, all of a sudden it's doubled in price, sometimes tripled in price, because all of a sudden, like you say, that de minimis is no longer under the radar of tariffs. And these are very popular sites. And the question is, will, say, American consumers continue to shop on these Chinese sites if they too are subject to tariffs?
Yeah, I suspect Temu is going to get hammered on this. I mean, they have a lot of stuff that appeals to people that they might be able to pay, be willing to pay a premium for. But for standard stuff, uh, I think this is going to really hurt them.
I agree. And right, it depends if you've been getting a deal from these sites and all of a sudden it's a little bit less of a deal or maybe a lot less of a deal. Are you still going to shop? And again, that's one of the question marks going forward as
Right.
these tariffs start to kick in, at least when it comes to us and China.
Now we have two cases this week of companies apparently announcing something, and then saying, "Oh, no, 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 we never planned that. That wasn't in the cards. It was maybe some rogue employee came up with it." One of them is Amazon was going to attach to every product
The buzz around.
what the tariff cost was going to be for that particular item. And they said, as soon as it came out, I think it came out on X, it was like, oh no, 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 no. We were never going to do that. And you can make a case that if that would be a particular example of being vindictive about pricing when you don't do it for like the added cost of items in California or the added cost of items in Florida. You don't put that on into parentheses or percentage. Why would you do that for a tariff? On the other hand, it'd be good to know. I would love to know that information. And I'm not going to look it up. If I could see it next to, a ballpoint pen on Amazon, good. The second one is Elon Musk, where a rumor started spreading that the board was looking for a new CEO. And then as soon as it came out into the public eye, Tesla immediately said, oh, no, we hadn't thought of that at all. Now, I bet you both of them had thought of that. And they were going in the preliminary stages of planning. And I bet you Tesla went even further and were actively putting together the job listings for the CEO. Because, it takes 10 months or so for a CEO to get hired. I bet they were both doing it. And I think that when they got caught in the spotlight, they didn't want that kind of exposure.
So I think on the Amazon one, that was simply Jeff Bezos, again, kowtowing to Donald Trump. And Trump even said, hey, they were going to do this. I called up Jeff Bezos, told him not to, and he didn't. He's a good guy. And that tells you everything you need to know about the relationship between Bezos and Trump. It tells you everything you need to know about Amazon and are they going to help us with the tariffs and actually be transparent? The answer apparently no. It would be great to have that because what is the big question we as consumers have? How much are these tariffs costing us?
What's the surcharge on everything?
I mean, look, you go to a restaurant and, if it has the caloric stuff, that's great. I want to know how many calories that thing has versus that thing. I want to know how much this costs on Amazon versus that as compared to pre-tariff. So that would have been a very helpful thing, but Bezos gave in once again to the president. And so therefore, we don't have that helpful thing. As for the Tesla thing, that's such an interesting story because we've all known for a long time, those of us who cover Tesla, that the board of directors is really right in the pocket of Elon Musk. And yet, what is the job? Job one. They have one job as a board of directors, and that is to serve the investors, right? To make sure that those investors are being taken care of. And they really weren't being taken care of all that well because Musk was distracted by Doge and digging tunnels and Neuralink, et cetera, X. And so that makes sense for what a normal, responsible board of directors would do. Tesla, I don't know, but it wouldn't be surprised if at least a faction of the board was like, we got to get a CEO that pays attention to us and our shareholders. And they hadn't had that for a while. And one thing that did change was on the Tesla earnings call earlier in the week when Musk said, indeed, I'll be spending less time with Doge and more time with Tesla. So whatever happened behind the scenes, it seems to have gotten the result they wanted.
There's another theory that they never intended to look for another CEO, but this was a shot across the bow of Elon Musk saying, pay more attention to your business and not to, the federal government and corruption there. Get back to stick to your knitting and let's get this company back healthy again.
And I think that would be a shot across the bow done by a responsible board of directors. If
that's what a board is supposed to do. Yes,
I agree.
Exactly.
I agree.
Okay. The Fortnite case. This is interesting because apparently Tim Cook said 2 years ago or more that he would abide by a certain ruling by the judge. And he didn't. It seems so uncharacteristic of this guy who seems to be incredibly careful about everything. And he literally ignored a court order. And that could actually lead to criminal prosecution. You don't mess with judges. I mean, Al Capone couldn't pull it off, So, the upshot of this is this whole thing has turned into a tar baby. It's a huge mess for Apple and an embarrassment. Uh, and it's going to be interesting to see. Oh, the judge also ruled, Apple, you can't charge fees for stuff you're selling outside of the App Store. So she is really coming down with both feet on Apple's neck. And I'm not sure Apple can get out of this without paying a lot of money and maybe even a criminal charge or two.
Yeah, maybe that. I think more significantly, though, is that it really changes the stranglehold they had over apps and the App Store and
Yeah,
payments. And so I predict you're going to have companies, sort of what Epic was trying to do. Companies will come up with their way of saying, hey, we don't need to take payments through the App Store only. And the
yeah,
experiment there will be to say, okay, if you go outside of the App Store, this is sort of Apple's defense in all this, will your business suffer because of all the people on the iPhone and how convenient and easy it is?
yeah.
Or will people appreciate just going straight to the source, whether that is Netflix or Epic or whatever? And I predict some companies will try to see if they can get around by themselves without needing the App Store. And now they'll have the legal backing to do that.
Well, they can certainly try, and if they get enough to counter the fees that Apple was paying,
Right.
then it's worthwhile. That'll be great to see. You know, I admire Apple for everything it's done, but it is a closed wall, a closed city, and everybody has to pay the toll to get in there. And I don't like companies that create that. I mean, I cheered when Yahoo finally, you know, broke down because that was an inside game too. And I love Apple. I love their creativity and their innovation, but maybe it's time to free free the people.
Or at least the companies that are trying to attract the people.
Yeah, at least the companies. Yeah, okay. And finally, uh, you and you and Campbell don't get to appreciate this, but in Sunnyvale and Mountain View, a company called Matternet is rolling out a, uh, a drone delivery service that's going to be all over both cities. They're just rolling it out. They did a kind of a beta test a couple months ago, and it'll be up to 5 pounds, and the drone can go up to 400 feet in the air. So it'll get over those 120-foot trees in my front yard. I hope. It may not get through the portico, but we'll see. It'll be interesting. It's sometimes it seems like this should have happened years ago because this is Silicon Valley, but apparently it's going to happen now, and we'll see. You know,
Yeah, we're
it,
starting to see some test sites for drone delivery, and I say
yeah,
let's give it a try.
let's give it a try. If
Right.
it ends up in my bird pond, well, that'll be that'll be another story. But for now, I'm optimistic.
Very good. Good
So
luck.
I'm not going to list all the companies, the platforms we're in. Everybody knows it. Uh, have a great weekend. Have a great weekend, everybody. And I'll be back. I'll be back in California. Been up on the Oregon coast for a while here, and we'll see you next week. Bye bye.